back. And of course, last night was a little stunning, the State of the Union address, or this address to the joint Congress by President Trump last night. And the fallout this morning and the comments and the follow-up is pretty interesting, to say the least. So very timely for us to have with us our good friend Dan Perkins. He's a political commentator. He's the host of What's on My Mind podcast. He's also an author of a great series called Sad Eyes, which is kind of a historic romantic novel, or two sets there. He has a couple of places you can contact with him, danperkins.guru, or Songs and Stories for Soldiers. And there he has an amazing outreach to veterans. Brother Dan, good to see you, friend. How are you, bud?
I'm fine, thank you. And yourself?
Good. Well, what's the Dan Perkins take from last night?
Well, I would start off by saying that you and I did a show about 2 weeks ago, and I talked to you about the art of the deal and the negotiations,
right,
and how it was supposed to happen. And we saw how it wasn't supposed to happen on Friday night. And he did everything wrong, and he didn't live up to what the process was supposed to be, and things fell apart. But my takeaway last night, first of all, the big takeaway for me was the Democratic Party in Congress, whether they intended to or not, showed that they have no heart, no compassion. For them to sit there on their hands and not acknowledge the mother of the young girl who was brutally murdered in University of Georgia, to sit on their hands when a 9-year-old boy who was supposed to be dead from brain cancer was there and made an honorary Secret Service agent, for them to sit there and deal with the widow and the two daughters of the gentleman who gave up his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. All those opportunities to show compassion for those people, which was not political, just compassion for their loss. They did nothing. They sat on their hands, didn't acknowledge it, and I think that was a devastating blow. Whoever orchestrated this response didn't pay attention to what was going to happen and to deal with the moments as they evolved that created passion for Mr. Trump and passion for what he's trying to do, and disdain for the Democrats. They took a huge beating overnight in social media because of their lack of compassion.
I couldn't have said it better. You're absolutely right. And you kind of wonder the peer pressure of those who wanted to say something or stand or applaud was under by perhaps a governing memo to sit on their hands. Must have been unbelievable.
I agree with you. And I the other thing that I would add, I stayed up and I watched the Democratic response from the junior senator from Michigan. There was no substance there. She had the opportunity to lay out an agenda of what they would want to do in lieu of what Donald Trump is trying to do. They had none. And it further demonstrates not only do they have no compassion, they have no ideas. And it was clear that she didn't have any ideas. The leadership of the Democratic Party, who chose her, and I'm sure worked with her with the speech, they didn't have anything of substance to offer.
I ask this question because I just think it's an obvious question to ask. The left seems to be so bankrupt. Do they toast for a while?
Oh, yeah. Bill Maher said when he was interviewing somebody on his Friday night show who was talking about how important the transgender is and the rights of children to decide how they're going to mutilate their bodies. And he simply said, you keep that up and you'll never win another election, because you are not aligning yourself with the American people, the mothers and fathers. And I don't know who said this, but it's obviously true. The stakes have been put in the ground. The Republicans have aligned themselves on subjects that 80% of America agrees. The Democrats have aligned themselves with what 20% of the electorate believes. You can't win if you have 20%. Now, I think it's possible, Perry, that you will see if they continue down this path of nothing of substance and disruption and not having anything of substance to say, you're going to see more and more Democrats in the House and the Senate switch parties.
Last night, the beginning numbers this morning, Dan, showed that those who watched last night, 76% said it was a great message. And 91% of those who watched last night said that he talked on the very issues that I was concerned about. Those are huge numbers.
Oh, unbelievable numbers. And I don't know who wrote the speech, but as we were getting to what I thought would be close to the end of the speech, I really closed my eyes just to listen to the words. And I'm telling you, if there's a Donald Trump library, some of those statements in the closing of that speech last night will be carved on the walls inside that library because they were absolutely magnificent. Very well delivered, but their content was just unbelievable.
Okay, I did want him to do something last night, and he kind of did it, but I wanted it a little bit pronounced. But at the beginning of the speech, I would hope he'd turn around and say, "Boy, I'm sure glad to see you two guys sitting there."
Well, I thought he handled himself extremely well when Mr. Green stood up and started screaming at him. He basically turned to the Speaker of the House, who was ready there at the microphone, and gave him a warning. And he continued, and he had him ejected. But if you notice, Trump did not say anything about what happened with Mr. Green. He ignored it totally.
Yeah, I said earlier on, I expected him last night, and I think it kind of happened that he wasn't going to talk to the room. He was going to talk over the room to the American people.
Right.
I think he accomplished that. So I want to come back. Moments before he enters the chambers last night, he gets a letter from Zelensky, who wants to get back together. He read portions of that letter last night, which was a brilliant thing to do because that globally trapped Zelensky into what he wrote in the letter. Mm-hmm. Are you surprised that Zelensky came back to the table?
No. I honestly believe when he was asked by formally asked by the Secretary of State to leave the White House, which was almost unprecedented, but he was asked to leave. I think when he got to the airport and got on his plane to go now to England, I think there were questions in his mind. Was he set up by the two Democratic senators who were, quote, coaching him an hour before his meeting with the president? And I think that they did set him up, and they didn't care anything about Zelensky at all. They were trying to make a point. And so they convinced him to take a different stance, to blow up the deal and attack Mr. Vance and the president. And it didn't work, and the president took a lot of heat and then blew up himself and basically called it off. So when he got to London, now, we heard a number last night from the president about the hundreds of billions of dollars that we have given of our taxpayer money to support the war, and when he got to London, the Prime Minister of England was saying, "We'll give you £2 billion. We'll put boots on the ground, and we'll give you some. We'll buy aircrafts and ammunitions and whatever it is you need." And he looked at $300 billion more or less from the United States and $2 billion from England, and began to say, "Wait a minute." And then when he met with the European ministers, and he didn't hear budgets going expanding to give money to them, to him specifically, he realized that he was in a very serious problem. And the president told him, until he apologizes and comes back and he's ready to make peace, I don't want him back in the White House. So he knew what he had to do if he had any chance, because if there's a peace accord, his term in office was up last May, and under the Constitution for Ukraine, they can't have a presidential election if they're at war. So he's on a free ride for a while. But his ratings, his approval ratings in the country by the Ukrainian people, about 60% do not want him to run again, period. And his approval rating, if it's possible to believe this, but it's true, his approval rating is 10 points lower than Joe Biden when he walked out the door, 21% approval. So he knows that if he's coming, in essence, Perry, he's falling on the sword, because he comes back, he gets a peace deal, there's going to be election, he's not going to get the job.
That was my next question. He doesn't survive this, but maybe he can go out the back door somewhat, a little bit more respected by helping a peace deal. But one last question. This is a big question, and I don't know how else to ask it. But we never had any accountability of the money that we sent over there. And he openly admitted he didn't know where $1 billion went.
Right.
Is he corrupt?
Oh, yeah. There's no question. It's one of the, supposedly, even before we got involved, was one of the most corrupt countries in the world. As it relates to his particular situation, I don't think it's $1 billion. I think it could be 50, 75, $100 billion is missing. And somehow he's going to have to respond to that, where it went. And I don't know how he's going to do that without implicating himself totally. But I believe that...
Excuse me, one other quick question before I take a break.
Sure.
At first, I did not understand the mineral deal. I understand the value of the mineral, but I didn't understand the point of the mineral deal in being somewhat of an agent to bring these people together. Now I'm beginning to see this. Did you ever think that a mineral deal would be the agent to create a peace accord, so to speak?
Yes, sir, I did. Because if you listen to what President Trump said when he started talking about the rare earth mineral deal, we were going to bring American scientists and American workers, and the workers from all over the world were going to come in and help Ukraine expand and recapture as much of that rare earth material as they could. It would be a way for us to repatriate the debt that we gave them, and also to help their own economy. So yeah, it made sense to me when the president said, this is how he's going to get it. This is how the deal's going to get done. We're going to get an economic benefit that's going to help us and help you. It's going to bring an end to the war, and then the countries that bring their people in to harvest this material will be de facto be the countries that will defend and protect their own people if the Russia wants to try to do something crazy.
All right, let me take a quick break because there's a follow-up question to this, and I want to give you enough time to answer it. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, Dan has a couple of places to connect with him. DanPerkins.guru is his website. SongsAndStoriesForSoldiers.us is outreach to veterans. And you can get his historic romance novels online. Sad Eyes, Volume 1 and 2. You can get that online as well by Dan Perkins. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Dan Perkins is with us, and a couple of places you can connect with him. First of all, check out his podcast, What's on My Mind podcast with Dan Perkins, danperkins.guru, the website, and his outreach to veterans, songs and stories for soldiers.us, and check that out. All right, Dan, given our last segment there where we talked about where President Zelensky is today, and now that he's written a letter to the president and basically said he's not apologizing, he's just basically saying, let's try this again. And it looks
right.
like they could even sign that today. And I'm beginning to understand a little bit more and more about the rare earth mineral deal and how that is a major factor in this. But the bottom line question now is, where does this leave Putin?
Well, I think that I want to answer your question, but I want to change the context just a little. The one thing that Mr. Trump has shown throughout this entire process, and you can see it and you can hear it in his language, in his body motions, it's all there. He has a genuine concern, passion for the thousands of people on both sides that are being killed each week still. As he talked about him last night, he talked about him last week, he talks about the young men and women of both Ukraine and Russia that are dying. There's been over 1 million Russians who have been killed or injured in this war so far. And 1 million, 2 million, 3 Ukrainians have been killed or injured. He looks at it from the standpoint that he says, look, I don't, this was a mistake. If I'd have been re-elected president, it wouldn't have happened. Millions would not have died, and we wouldn't have spent billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. Putin, I'm sure, is somewhat unpopular with the casualties. He buried a lot of soldiers from Afghanistan. He's buried more from Ukraine. So getting out of this situation where the Russian people, through his government, are sending young men and women to go there and die, if he could eliminate that, he would feel better about himself, and I think the people would feel better that it's over. So where does he go? He takes I believe, a very soft line position. He's glad that peace has come, that the carnage that took place is no longer going to be there, and both countries can get started on rebuilding their countries.
So does he end up with a little real estate out of the deal?
No, I think the language that has been used, Perry, is that, and Secretary or Vice President Vance said this when he was over in that area. We're not going to go back to the prior to the 2022 lines. That's not. We're not going backwards. That we're not going to get that back. And that's part of the appeasement for Putin to come out of the deal with something, and that is the land that he's recaptured.
The other part of it is President Trump appears that part of his motive in all of this negotiation, and I don't know if the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is part of this, but at the end of the day, the president would like to wean Russia off of China. Can that be accomplished?
That's a really good question. If the president gets what he wants in terms of becoming the energy power of the world, right now the country that is supplying the most crude oil to China is Iran. They're the largest supplier. If we put in more and more sanctions and create a situation where they can't export crude oil and can't generate revenue, and if you've paid any attention how oil prices have dropped a good bit since Trump became president. And so I see where Russia was also sending oil to China. But I don't think that they can continue to ship what they're shipping now and make up what Iran is going to lose to supply them. So they're going to be able to do something, but they're not going to be able to take over. And because they can't be a major supplier, the only reason, in my opinion, why China wants a relationship with Russia is they want their energy, because they don't have it. If they can't get it, then what value is Russia to the Chinese?
So that, in a shadow way, what you're saying there, Dan, is that it appears now that something is going to happen to Iran via Israel with the backing of the United States, possibly, obviously, taking out the nukes, maybe destroying the refineries, and even possibly a regime change. That is a big deal on the global landscape.
No question. And I think to try and get at the nuclear facility is a big ask for Israel, but I don't think it's a big ask for Israel to take out the pipelines and the refineries that process the crude oil in Iran. If they can eliminate their ability to drill and process crude oil to ship it, the country goes bankrupt very quickly and less of a threat.
Are you planning on a cruise to the Panama Canal anytime soon?
I don't know, but I thought it was interesting. I mean, you got to give kudos to Mr. Trump. I mean, what did he do since he's been in? Apple's going to spend $500 billion building new infrastructure in the United States. The largest semiconductor manufacturer in the world is going to spend $100 billion. Larry Ellison's going to spend another $500 billion. Honda's moving a plant from a new plant that was going to be in Mexico to Indiana. So what's happening is very quickly, and then what do we have? We have Larry Ellison, he does his deal, and then we look at BlackRock, the largest asset holder in the world, is going to buy the two port cities and in essence be able to control the Panama Canal without a shot being fired. Amazing.
It is. It's just a little staggering to see the...
In 45 days. In 45 days. That's the point.
Now, he said Greenland can do what they want, but we want them.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of the takeaway from last night. They can do what they want, but we're going to get them. I mean, that's kind of like, have a nice day, we're coming anyway.
But what he said, what he said was he would like to have the people of Greenland to have the right of determination of what they want to do. And if they want to vote to leave the control of Denmark or Sweden, whichever one it is,
Denmark,
and become independent nation, and if they want to align themselves, not necessarily, it won't be a state, but it would be a territory of the United States, they should have the ability to do that. And I think that probably will happen. The last question for me to you.
Yeah.
If Trump pulls off this peace treaty, will he get the Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, let me put it, I'll answer it this way. He obviously deserves it, but his last name is Trump. He probably won't get it.
So would you be disappointed?
Yeah. I mean, they gave it to Obama for just getting out of bed.
Right. Yes. That's very true.
Yeah. So, I think he certainly is a candidate for it, but will it happen? I don't know. Hey, one other quick question, 30 seconds. Were you surprised last night that he said that if you buy a car that was made in the United States, that the interest on that car payment would be tax deductible?
Yes, sir. I did.
Wasn't that something?
It's amazing. I mean, he's telling people. He says no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. That's appealing to lots of different constituency that are going to make more money. They're going to have more money to spend. But the idea to buy American, if the car is made here,
yeah,
you get to deduct the interest on the car loan.
That's amazing. So he did make the comment: $500 billion a year are being a fraud or mismanagement that even the government Department of Management admits to. If you take that times 5, we no longer have a debt if we just stop the nonsense.
Yes, yes, that's true. I mean, I know that this people will say,
yeah,
gee, it seems simple, but it is. It's a simple matter of math.
Yeah.
If you cut down what you're spending,
there you go,
and you create a surplus, you start reducing your debt.
All right.
There we go.
Got to go, bro. Good as a DanPerkins.guru. Check it out. Check out his novels online, Sad Eyes, and check out his podcast, What's on My Mind with Dan Perkins. Thanks, buddy. Take care.
You bet. Take care.